questions that were being directed at President Trump yesterday. You could obviously see that he was ignoring those questions from reporters shouting over helicopter engines. They were asking about this tweet in particular and whether he had confirmed for the first time that he is actually under investigation by the special counsel. And joining me now is Cynthia Alksne, former federal prosecutor, and joins us now from Washington, D.C. Cynthia, it's great to have you with us this morning.
Good morning.
Let's talk a little bit about, first, that interaction, but more importantly, that tweet. Do you think that he is, based on that tweet, he is confirming that he is now under investigation?
Well, he is confirming, but it's so obvious. I mean, when the witness, Comey, comes forward and says, I was fired, and when we know the president has said he did it because of the Russian investigation, and we have a special counsel investigating the Russia investigation, of course he's under investigation. So to me, it's not clear why this is a big hoo-ha. It's obvious that he's under investigation at this point for obstruction. But remember this, also, when we talk about the investigation, there's not just one investigation, there's really three. There's, did Russia interfere in our elections? That's one investigation. Did the Trump campaign collude with the Russians to interfere in our elections? Did they give them hints about where they wanted all of these bots and all of this computer interference to go? That's the second investigation. And the third investigation is whether or not Trump obstructed justice. So yes, he's under investigation for the obstruction. It's not clear how he's involved in the other two investigations.
So to that point about the possibility of different investigations, earlier in the week, the Times reported that President was considering firing the special counsel, Bob Mueller. And former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney Andrew McCarthy argues in the Conservative National Review that Mueller should not have been hired in the first place because he says that the special counsel is not needed for what he called a counterintelligence operation or investigation. So Mueller has gone ahead. We know that he's already staffed up with experts in criminal law. So do you think that the president is taking his cue a little bit from conservative media on this particular issue?
I think he takes his cue from Newt Gingrich, who went on some kind of a rampage about Mueller. I think that's where his cue comes from. That's my hunch. But Mueller is there. He's there to stay. He's extremely competent. He's extremely honorable. He's very workmanlike. He's a prosecutor's prosecutor. And I worked with him a long time ago, and I just admire the heck out of him. And I think he'll do a great job, and there's no chance that Trump is going to fire him.
What do you say to the charge that Bob Mueller has gone ahead and hired some top investigators as well that have links and associations to the Democrats, particularly the Clinton, not the Clinton campaign, but the Clinton empire, so to speak, and that in itself taints his ability to be a neutral observer and investigator?
I don't think much of that. I think if you went through the list, you'd find there were donations on either side. Prosecutors are people too, you know. But Bob Mueller is a real independent person, and I have great faith in him, as do, I mean, nobody really cares that I have great faith in him, but the members of the Hill also have great faith in him, and the senators have great faith in him, and the people at the Justice Department have great faith in him. So I'm not worried about that. I don't think that's important.
So let's talk about really quickly that tweet that the president put out there talking about the fact that he's being investigated for firing the FBI director by the man who told me to fire the FBI director, which obviously implies Rod Rosenstein. Where does this leave Rod Rosenstein, you think? Is he in some type of jeopardy now just based on that tweet alone?
I don't think he's in jeopardy. I do think there's an important decision for him to make about whether or not he's going to recuse himself. Many don't want him to recuse because he supports Mueller and he won't shut down the investigation. And I understand that. He's also a known quantity on the Hill, and people trust him. And he has tried cases and put witnesses in the grand jury, and he's obviously capable of supervising the investigation. On the other hand, he's got a big problem because he is a witness in that third section of the investigation that has to do with whether or not the president obstructed justice. He did write the cover fake memo on why why Comey should be fired. He did have conversations with the president on the firing. He probably had conversations with the attorney general on the firing. So he's in a difficult position, and my hunch would be eventually he ends up recusing himself. And then the question is what happens, because the number 3 person is not a prosecutor. She's a very intelligent, smart, well-respected lawyer, but she's never tried cases. She's never put, to my knowledge, she's never put a witness in the grand jury, and is not really a criminal lawyer so much as she is a judicial policy lawyer.
You said here last
That's a problem.
Yeah, but you said here last week in your assessment that this is actually worse than Watergate because it involves a foreign government, as you mentioned in one of those investigations, being involved in our elections and our voting process. Does what happened this week make that more true? I mean, how do you see this playing out?
Well, I see as the comparisons to Watergate go, if we look at the 3 investigations, if it's really true that the Russians are involved in our election process, and it looks like it is, I mean, that's a nightmare for our country. If it's really true that the Trump organization somehow steered the Russian computer people to go to certain states or do something like that, that's involving other people in our very basic, fundamental governing decisions, and that's obviously worse than Watergate to me. What's just most like Watergate is the obstruction investigation, because that is a case where, of course, in Watergate and here, we have sort of a paranoid president. We have the stealing of information either by hacking or by the Watergate break-in itself. We have the firing of the prosecutors. So there are a lot of similarities, the obstruction case, to Watergate, although I am concerned about the Russian involvement as being worse.
All right, Cynthia Alksne, thank you very much for that analysis and insight this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.